Let's begin the show by starting it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I'm your host, Phil Bakke, and we're a proud member of the Beautiful Game Network and brought to you by Roughneck Scarves and Icarus FC. Little shout out from Pert Hapley there for Christian Canales, who joins me tonight. Christian, I really appreciate you bringing this one back in the group chat this week.
Yeah, man. Like I said, I don't know how it's not more popular, like how it's not more mainstream.
It's like, I don't know. I'm a little upset that I didn't think to incorporate it into the podcast sooner because it's so perfect. Like there's so many clips that would be so amazing just throughout the show. So I need to be careful because I think our whole soundboard may end up being Pert Hapley by the end of this, but for our different segments, the different Pert Hapley moods. But we're also joined tonight by Mika Burrell. Mika, welcome back.
Yo, I need to get in on this meme. I unfortunately don't know. Is it Parks and Rec?
What is?
Okay. Everyone has been telling me to watch this show, so maybe I just need to bite the bullet and do it.
For those who don't watch the show or haven't watched the show Parks and Rec, Pert Hapley's a local newscaster who says just the most obvious possible thing. So he's kind of one of those inadvertently hysterical characters that you don't really think much of, but he's just so funny every time he's on screen. But as we kind of go into this show, obviously not a ton to talk about on the Locomotive front because we covered a lot of big news last week. We covered, obviously, it was a tough match in Colorado, so we will get into that. We have big free agency news in the world of soccer, apparently. And then we do have some, kind of jarring news to talk about with Locomotive announcing that there will be fans allowed at this upcoming home game against Real Monarchs, which we will also speak about towards the end of the show. But first things first, couple European finals to cover, couple of things that went down. I mean, at this point, the Europa League final, Sevilla, they're the Thanos of the Europa League. I mean, they are inevitable. Mika, like Sevilla winning a third Europa League in kind of recent memory and sixth now cup for them. It's kind of a weird accomplishment, right? Because it's like they've won so many trophies, but it's not the trophy they probably would, desire most, I guess.
Yeah. It's such a weird but amazing accomplishment. I mean, the club is just transformed when they play Europa League football. I think this is their sixth overall. So, yeah. I mean, just what an accomplishment for them. And with different players and different managers. I mean, Unai Emery did win 3 of them. So, right. So that says a lot. But I'm really pleased for Sevilla, even though I have, Real Betis leanings. But I'm pleased for them and for Spanish football, and especially for Julen Lopetegui, who is a good coach. But after everything that went down with Real Madrid and the Spanish national side, people kind of put some disrespect on his name. But he he is a good coach, and to win a European trophy in your first season is pretty incredible. And it was a good match too. I mean, Inter look like they're trying to get back to the Inter of old, the Inter that used to dominate Europe. So I think with Antonio Conte, they're on the right track. Just wasn't to be this time around when you're, again, going up against the inevitable. So, yeah.
Christian, I mean, your kind of newfound club, Wolves, obviously went out of the competition, unfortunately. But watching this final, it started so crazy, I guess, in the sense that, no one wanted to defend in this final. Kind of a flip from what we're used to in these like big games where they almost never kind of live up to the hype. But these two teams kind of just said screw it and kind of threw caution to the wind in this one.
Yeah, and still somehow we ended up with a what? Or sorry, I lost track. What, Champions League or Europa?
Europa.
Okay, so Europa. I didn't watch that final. I'm going to be 100% honest with you.
Oh, my bad. I for some reason I thought you were in the chat on that one, but no, that like
no.
The
well, I don't blame you after Wolves went out. I mean, after Arsenal went out, I'm like, I'm not watching this shit until the final.
Yeah, the final of this competition was so crazy, I think, because of the way that we're used to seeing European finals go. We know that they can sometimes be a little bit of a letdown especially after some of the semifinals and kind of the excitement around those. But in the Europa League, Inter just decided like set piece defending was not for them. And Sevilla to an extent, like, I mean, in the first half did the same. So, kind of uncharacteristic, I would say, of those teams conceding soft goals. But in the end, it was Sevilla just like finding a way to get that third, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, for Inter, I mean, they were missing Milan Skriniar. He didn't start. Who's been, such a stalwart of that three-headed beast of defense and with Godin and De Vrij. So that probably had something to do with it. And also Sevilla were playing their young goalkeeper. So yeah, I mean, there were just a lot of like little lineup changes here and there, but Luke de Jong starts for Sevilla, and that was just a masterstroke by Julian Lopetegui because he's not, the starting striker. It's usually an Asiri, but I mean, he was just clinical as far as being a target man on the night and was able to do the business for them. So it was an exciting game, a little more exciting than some parts to the Champions League final, I would say, but yeah.
and what was that you mentioned? The yeah, it was a Champions League final. Christian, I mean, so kind of a weird final in that, I mean, two amazing teams, like two very talented teams, obviously, between Bayern and PSG. It seemed like a pretty cagey match to start. It seemed like they were both kind of trying to feel each other out, but it looked like Bayern was kind of in control. PSG in the first half with maybe the better chances. Bayern, a couple penalty claims. Like for a 0-0, up until later in the game, we had seen the 0-0 the night before take place in Colorado Springs. Did it kind of demonstrate for you like how a 0-0 game can be so vastly different, or a game that's deadlocked like that can be so vastly different at a level like USL Championship versus a level like the elites of Europe?
Did you think that the first half of the Champions League or the final was cagey? I guess so. I've heard some people say that, and the commentator said it too, but I thought it was like they were trying to, I feel like there were chances. It was just so much elite quality on display, especially from Manuel Neuer. I mean, people have said, for the past couple of seasons, oh, he's finished, that his latest injury, like there's no way coming back from this. But I mean, he had a fantastic performance. I mean, keeping out Mbappe and Neymar. So I guess I didn't think of it as cagey, but I don't know. I mean, I guess we were expecting more goals when you see PSG and Bayern on are the ones playing this match. But the second half, I think the structure definitely went out the window, which I thought was surprising because with just a 1-0 lead, you thought Bayern might just try to lock it up. But like their midfield their line was still in midfield at like in the 80th minute or so. So. Right. It was an interesting one, and Bayern get the treble, so an incredible achievement.
Yeah, I think I'll have to be the first to admit to being on the Neuer decline train. I think I was a member of that, and in terms of thinking just about the quality, of other German keepers that are coming up through. Obviously, Marc-Andre ter Stegen has been just unbelievable in a kind of mess over at Barcelona. He's been a pretty consistent, like amazing performer. So I was thinking from a Germany standpoint, like Neuer's on his way out. He's not really like at the same level. I think the World Cup did a lot to kind of push that along because of the couple of like odd moments from him. but in this final, he was unbelievable. Like he was truly fantastic. And I think it just speaks to one, like obviously the quality of the team can change a goalkeeper's fortunes a lot. And there are plenty of good goalkeepers that play in bad teams and look bad, I guess, and vice versa, almost maybe. Where I think there's a lot of maybe average goalkeepers that are made to look much better by their surroundings. So sure. Neuer in this one was absolutely the difference for much of the first half, I think, and his ability off his line, especially as he kind of obviously he's getting on in years, even for a keeper. And definitely a mobile keeper. I think that's just like so impressive that he still is so quick off his line and still able to make an impact against guys like Neymar and Mbappe. Like some of the, when you mention, pace and just ability on the ball and finishing, like these are some of the first players, kind of at the top of the list of all of that. So, I thought it was really great from Neuer, and he keeps Bayern in it in the first half. I mean, a little bit of controversy, Christian. I mean, we're used to refereeing controversies in USL. Couple of non-calls throughout this one, kind of on both sides. What did you make of the non-penalty calls, or the ref kind of being a little bit more lenient seemingly?
I have a little bit of inner conflict with myself about it, because questionable a little bit, but also, and so usually I'm all about like making the right call, but also it's hard, you don't want to be the reason the result goes one way or the other, and depending on whose sideline you're sitting on, you can still be seen that way, whether you call it or don't.
Sure.
So it's in the end, it was still a great game. And I don't think the result is unfair. I don't think, the worst team won or anything like that. So in the end, it was a game. And so if that's the way it went, then that's the way it went.
Throughout the match, Mikko, as we were watching, you specifically called out Timo Kehrer at that right back spot for PSG. Ultimately, the ball in from Kimmich that finds the head of Kingsley Coman for the goal floated over Timo in that instance. So, do you feel it all validated by the fact that you essentially called out their biggest weakness ahead of them conceding?
Yeah, broke clock is right twice a day, right? Tilo Kehrer had a nightmare, to be honest. I mean, to be fair to him, Kingsley Coman is a good player. You and I kind of joked that we were surprised to see him start, and then he ends up being the difference maker and had Kehrer on skates, honestly, throughout much of the second half. Well, pretty much the whole game. I don't really think that, he wasn't stopping any of his crosses. He was getting just completely dribbled past. And, Tilo Kehrer is a young player. He's a, Schalke product. PSG obviously see a lot of potential in him if they were, going to snap him up from Germany at that age. But just not a great performance from him. But I do think, though, that PSG, while they will obviously be disappointed by this result, I do think that this certainly sets them up for success in the future in this competition, because just making it to the final was a big accomplishment for them. I mean, that's literally why they exist. They won, 3 trophies this season in Ligue 1, but that's not what they're here for. And I think that they have definitely solidified themselves in Europe's elite, despite having lost.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing too, because I think PSG and Man City find themselves kind of in the same boat right now, where they're both still chasing that continental success. They've kind of conquered all on the domestic front. At City, obviously, knocked off that a little bit this past year, but still like winning trophies, at an alarming rate in England and just not able to get over the line in Europe. So it'll be interesting to see how PSG kind of go about getting over that hurdle, I think. Last thing on this before we move on to some Locomotive talk is Robert Lewandowski doesn't score in this game, but finishes as the top scorer in all three competitions that Bayern won this season: the Bundesliga, the DFB Pokal, and the Champions League. Golden Boot winner in all those competitions, and no Ballon d'Or to show for it. I mean, have you seen, I guess, a player's greatness not recognized in such a kind of stunning way?
Yeah, it's a joke, isn't it? I mean, I think I've talked about it before on this pod, but the way that the Ballon d'Or calendar is set up doesn't make any sense. But in this season, it actually does, and there was no reason to cancel the award. I think it's a farce, honestly. He is the Ballon d'Or winner this year in my mind. I mean, he was absolutely incredible. And even though he didn't score in the final, he was still giving PSG's defense a tough time, and did have, a couple attempts early on with the shot off the post that was heart stopping, I'm sure, for Keylor Navas. But I mean, yeah, it is. I can't think of another athlete who's been so like incredibly shafted. Is there anyone in basketball, Christian, maybe, who's like individually fantastic but just doesn't get the plaudits?
Honestly, I think there's tons. Probably about 60% of the Spurs roster, but I might be a little bit biased. I think that there's, and maybe Phil might have a different opinion. One, because he was in the area, and two, because I'm a little bit younger and maybe wasn't exposed. But I think a lot of the teams that Jordan played for had a lot of good players, but because they're playing with Michael Jordan, they maybe don't get the recognition that they deserve either.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's been players who have suffered from that, not necessarily in that direct of a way in football. In that, I don't know that I would look to another player at Barcelona or at Real Madrid or Juve like as a Ballon d'Or winner necessarily. But I think Robert Lewandowski is definitely a victim of Messi and Ronaldo in the sense that he has been scoring like loads of goals for, the better part of like almost 15 years now. Yeah. And it's been just kind of like shrug emoji.
Bayern players in general, I guess, because I mean, Frank Ribery probably should have won a Ballon d'Or in his career too. So, and he said as much. So he's very clear on that. I don't know that Lewandowski kind of has that personality to make a big thing of it, but sure. I think he would definitely deserve this year's award if it was being awarded. Well,
I'm sure his TikTok account will be lit. I know that's become a source of controversy, Leva's TikTok account. But anyways, Bayern, I think rightfully champions of Europe. I think they probably were favorites to win the competition before the format change and the suspension of play, and they find a way to get it done in Lisbon, regardless of all of the changes and the big break that the Bundesliga had. Because I mean, Bayern went quite a long time without playing competitively before the Champions League began again. So I think it's still a pretty fantastic accomplishment for that team to see it out despite all of the kind of start-stop nature and kind of weird format that they were presented with. Plus, I mean, they ended Barcelona as a club, so it's just it's this crazy accomplishment. I feel
absolutely.
Unfortunately, Locomotive did not provide us with the intensity or the fireworks, I guess, of either the Europa League or Champions League final. But we are a Locomotive podcast, and we are going to talk about it regardless. So, I mean, generally in this game, the lineup, I think I want to get your guys' just kind of initial reactions in terms of the lineup comes out at the beginning of this one, before Locomotive takes on Switchbacks, and we see a couple of full debuts in there. Macca King and Brent Coleman named in the starting 11. And then couple of surprises in midfield, namely the biggest one being that Brian Rebellon starts in midfield. So this lineup, I just want to get your guys' opinion of kind of how you thought about it as it was announced. Like, how did you react, I guess, to seeing this lineup, and what were your thoughts about trying to get a result in Colorado Springs with the 11 that we played?
So when I saw it, I was excited. I think I had told you guys that it seems like kind of the most radical thing that Mark has done so far that wasn't out of necessity. Like when Foxy played as a 9, that was because we literally had no one else to stick up there. But so I was kind of excited about it. I think in theory it could work. Brian is good on the ball. He's good on the attack from, I guess we learned it's probably more of a positioning thing, from when he plays at right back, he's probably more suited to that. But in theory, without having actually seen anything take place, I thought it might be really interesting. I thought it was interesting that both Brent and Macca got a start so quickly after being introduced. Again, as far as I know, not out of necessity, just as a matter of rotation. So I was intrigued is how I would describe how I felt.
Yeah, I think I agree on the sense that it's, in theory and on paper, it looked like it's something that could work and could be interesting. I was a little surprised at just the sheer number of changes, because it really seemed like we were rotating for a different competition. It was this is an Open Cup fixture, that's why we're rotating, but it was a league game, nothing, as Christian said, nothing that would necessitate all these changes that we're aware of. So just, I was a little bit perplexed by it, but I was willing to give it a shot. Now, having seen that that lineup play, I have some thoughts. I'm sure we'll get into that, but yeah.
Well, Mika, we can start with Macca and Brent. They make their full debuts for the club. Brent obviously on loan from Minnesota United, but Macca seemingly a solution for Mark potentially at right back and at maybe as a starter if Brian does make this transition into midfield. What did you make of the new boys? Basically, how'd you rate their debuts?
Sure. Well, so with Macca King, I was actually pleasantly surprised by what I saw and kind of excited by what I saw, because he's more mobile than I anticipated he would be. I know last time, on the pod, we spoke about how I had spoken to an Indy 11 fan who said, he was pretty much surplus to requirements because we have more athletic options. And so that kind of gave me pause, thinking, we're trying to solve those issues at Locomotive. So we don't want, we don't want players that don't have legs about them. But he seemed plenty fit and willing to provide kind of an option in attack. So I thought it was a decent start for him. I mean, he did get whistled a lot. And I think that's just a consequence of trying to fit with the new side that he's in and get a feel for his teammates and the moves that they make and the runs and all that kind of thing. And then as for Brent Coleman, he actually had statistically a very good game. So what I was able to glean kind of from FOTMob was Coleman had 88% pass accuracy, 6 out of 8 accurate long balls, won half of his duels, 7 clearances, won 100% of his aerial duels, and had 1 interception. And I think he was actually pretty decent on the ball too. I mean, usually it's Mishak who brings the ball out of defense, but Coleman looked like he could do that job as well. And plus he's 6'2". So, I mean, he kind of seems like an all-rounder for us. And I was happy with his debut. I thought it was as good as it could be, and he helped keep a clean sheet. So
how did you feel about Brent specifically, Christian? I mean, he's coming down from an MLS team. Like, do you think he fit in pretty well? I mean, obviously we come away with a clean sheet, but what'd you think of Brent's debut?
I was thrilled with it, honestly. You know, I think he, like, as far as fitting into the team, like you said, we've seen worse games from unfamiliar center back duos, you know, when things have to shift around.
Sure.
We've definitely seen worse games communication wise. So I was impressed by that. Like Mikka said, very good on the ball. I love seeing him run around the field. It's just kind of like, no offense to Chiro, but it's just kind of like a breath of fresh air. Seeing, you know, another athletic center back out there. So that was great. And I think that all around nature of him, because Mishak doesn't seem to be last year's Mishak for various reasons, I think that he is he's kind of that replacement as far as what we were missing from Mishak last year. I think we've got in him this year, since at least up to now, Mishak himself doesn't have that.
And yeah, I think it's interesting that Brent, and I'm not trying to attack Mishak in any sort of way, but I thought it was kind of interesting, and maybe you guys can, like, if you thought differently, let me know. But it was kind of strange because Brent almost seemed the more like in tune and kind of awake to what was going on, where it seemed like Mishak he almost looked like the new guy, like, next to him. And I'm not trying to take away from Mishak's quality, because he obviously offers a lot and he does a lot for us. But in this game and in this particular situation, it almost felt like Brent was more in control of what was going on than Mishak, who's, you know, very used to the system and has been in it now for a while, obviously, you know, with an injury in there. But is that a source of concern at all to you, that a guy came in and kind of looked more comfortable than one of our more established players and part of our kind of starting center back duo?
Yeah, no, I would probably agree with everything you're saying there. I can think of two instances where I thought, wow, Mishak's really not reading the game too well here. I mean, there was one where a ball just gets played straight behind him. And that's for, it wasn't called offside or anything. He just is not reading the play there. And then there's another where one of their wingers, might have been Servos or someone, just dribbles right across him, right across the box. And he's not able to get close enough to his man where, on the other side of defense, Coleman looks like he's reading the game perfectly and reacting and stepping up when he needs to, dropping back when it's more appropriate. So I wonder, if the new pairing kind of added to Mishak's seeming off performance, I guess you could say. But At the same time, we've kind of noticed this, as this return to play has gone on, that he is missing something that, from his game that he had last season. I think still fine on the ball, but as far as reading the game defensively, it seems like something's off there, or maybe his body's not catching up with his mind necessarily.
The other big thing, obviously we talked about it already, we mentioned it already, with Maka coming into the team. I don't know if there's going to be any Mika memes that if the club releases anything called the Maka Militia, then we're going to have to actually riot.
Yeah. Hold up. I'm going to put in my trademark application ASAP.
Obviously with Maka coming into that right back spot, Brahim moves up into midfield, and it was something that Mark had hinted at in the article announcing Maka, and something that I think we chatted about offline. We were talking about what do we really make of this? Brahim starts in midfield with Chapa and Yuma. And I think on this podcast, I've previously expressed some consternation about Yuma playing by himself as the lone holding midfielder in a 3. What did you guys make of this composition, I guess, in midfield? And what did you make of Brahim kind of having to adapt to this game, and adapt to a new role with these two midfield partners in that diamond with him?
Go for it, Christian.
I think that it was just there was much maybe inexperience, I think, for the position. You don't have Richie out there and you don't have Nick out there. So I don't feel the same way about Yuma being out there as you do. I think that he can hold his own with some more help. I think that he really was on his own with the combination of Chapa and Brian playing as a mid. So I think that there was just not enough years on the field in that part of the field is what it came down to.
Yeah, I mean, go for it, Mika.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why Mark would want to move Rebion into midfield, because he is technically very good on the ball. And, this is kind of like a theme in football nowadays, is that there are these fullbacks that are such technicians that they almost feel wasted at fullback, a la Trent Alexander-Arnold, Joshua Kimmich, Sergio Roberto. Obviously we're talking much higher level of play, but I feel like Brian Rebion is kind of like becoming that sort of player where it's like, is that really where he should be because he's so talented? On the flip side, though, at this level, I feel like why fix it if it ain't broke? Mm-hmm. Again, first game for Locomotive in that position, so we can't expect, I don't think anyway, a super stellar performance. He ends up with 78% pass accuracy and a yellow card. I think that just goes to show you that it seemed like he was trying to work out what spaces he should be occupying. There were times where he and Maki King were marking the same guy or like running back and, switching positions, and that's fine. If one's going to underlap and the other takes up that space or whatever. But I just, based on this performance alone, if we don't have to play him there, then don't, in my opinion. I think he offers a lot more just with, his pace and his technical qualities as a fullback. I don't think he's wasted there, but
sure.
Mark may feel different. He obviously feels differently. So,
right.
And I'll add too that I am not jumping to the conclusion right now that this can never work.
Sure.
What we don't know is how long this has been a thought, a thought that's that they're using in training.
Sure.
True.
With King just showing up recently, maybe Brian has had 2 weeks, of working at that position in midfield. So, like Mika said, the talent is there, the skills are there. So, maybe with a little more practice, but if it is a matter of it's just starting, they're just starting this out, then why throw them into a game situation? Especially, well, I guess we know why. We've heard Mark say as much that this season is still kind of a wash. But
yeah,
I was going to say, if you're trying to win this season in a format where every game means that much more, why try and make those drastic changes without being prepared?
Yeah, I think it speaks to the fact that Mark does see this as, and I don't want to say he's not taking it seriously, because I think that devalues the amount of work that the club and that the team is putting in on a daily basis, and they're obviously training hard. They want to win every game. I'm not trying to call that into question, but I do think Mark sees this as an opportunity to try out some stuff he's been thinking about. And it's a little bit of kind of a experimental season where he can have a go with Brahim at midfield against switchbacks. And yeah, they come out, it's a 0-0 draw. I'd be shocked if we heard comments from him saying that it was a good performance, because, I mean, by all metrics, it was pretty shit. So
would you be shocked though? Would you? Because I wouldn't.
But like, even for him, this would be a stretch.
Yeah.
He's the eternal optimist, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find like a big positive aside from the clean sheet in this match. But the thing about Brahim in midfield for me is that Brahim almost, and this is going to be oversimplifying the problem to a very like probably overly basic extent. But the biggest difference for me between a fullback and a central midfielder, even when they're very technically gifted and when they've got the ability that Brahim does, is that fullbacks almost never have to turn with the ball. And that's something for me, like a fullback almost always receives the ball running towards, like if you're involved like our fullbacks are in the attack, they receive the ball from a midfielder who has turned, or from a center back who's like now facing the opposition goal, and they get it played to their feet most often, running downfield. And in the case of Brahim, I think he was getting the ball in just kind of like unfamiliar territory, and he's not used to being marked like that. I mean, I'm sure in training, he's a gifted kid. I'm sure he's like turning people in training all the time, but there's plenty of players that haven't been able to translate, training quality to game quality. That's like all of sports. There's plenty of guys who do insane things in training that just can't translate it. So I'm not saying that Brahim never will, but I think it was apparent in this game that Brahim was just very uncomfortable being asked to do the things that we see guys like Nick or Richie do kind of as a matter of fact, like almost as habit and kind of second nature. So it just looked so clunky, I think, in comparison. So for me, that's really what it came down to, is Brahim is going to look like kind of out of place for a little bit playing in those positions, because he's just not used to it. And the way that, I mean, and we can talk about this now, obviously there's more work to be done, but Mika, something we brought up during the game, and we actually talked about last episode, was the fact that switchbacks in the game in El Paso really tried to limit the involvement of the fullbacks and did a good job of keeping Fox and Rebellon from like impacting the game from wide. But as a result, Locomotive was very good at cutting them apart through the midfield. In this game, we saw switchbacks kind of flip the script and just pack the midfield and not really worry about the wings much at all. And Brahim being in that congested area, it seemed like it just didn't do him any favors.
Yeah. I don't know. Did somebody at Switchbacks listen to the podcast? Because number one, we're flattered. And number two, I will be invoicing you for my tactical advice. No.
Mika Militia Tactical Consulting Company, like LLC.
Yeah. I mean, like I said last time around, like I would not go with a 3 at the back. I'd commit another man to midfield, because then you can really clog up our system. And that's exactly what they did. This game made me realize how spoiled that we are in watching Locomotive, because even when we aren't scoring goals and even when we aren't getting the results, the football is almost always nice to watch. Yeah. And this just was not. This was not Lowry ball as we know it. So, I mean, credit to Switchbacks that they adjusted for that, and that I'm sure when they saw the lineup too, if they do have, some sense of scouting, that they were probably thrilled to see the selections that we made, because, no Richie Ryan, no Nick Ross to kind of just, control the tempo. They were able to deal with that. Now, Switchbacks, I would still say they are not a talented team particularly, and that's why they didn't get on the scoreboard either. I think we still should have probably beaten them. I mean, this result's a poor one, honestly. I mean, we get a point out of it. It's on the road, but as far as talent, I think is concerned, we should have beat them. But I mean, yeah, they changed it up, and good on them. That's what we want to see, is that people taking the competition seriously, even though it is a return to play and what have you. But it was one of those performances that just made me realize, the football is pretty good most of the time. It's just, this was one of those ones that wasn't.
Christian, as we look forward, obviously the match ends, Locomotive, no shots on target. We've talked the last few games about how and the last few episodes, I think, about how central and important Dylan Mares and Josue Aron Gomez have become to the attack. Was this a match where, do you chalk it up to it was just one of those nights, or is the amount of minutes that these guys are getting, is it starting to become an issue for those two?
I don't think so. I think that because of the way that everyone else is playing, anyone up there would have had just as hard a day. Because I'll say towards the end of every game this season, they look tired, but they still put in a great game the whole time. So I wouldn't write them off as, fatigued at this point just yet. Because I think that it was a factor of, from the back going forward, we couldn't get anything done. They just happened to be kind of on the end of that. So if things are back here aren't working, then at the other end of the field, they're not going to have a day either. And I think that some of what we've seen from Dylan too, some of his brilliance as well as on the ball though, is the free kicks. And, we had, I think maybe one to get a shot off of.
Yeah.
So we were kind of robbed of that from his game on Saturday also.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I think you've brought up, kind of the key thing where and, Mika, you can chime in here, but the midfield issue in this game and the experiment really impacted not only Locomotive's possession and kind of what we're used to in the fluid style of play, but ultimately as a team that plays that way, it inevitably impacted the attack as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with these systems where it is possession based, is you need someone to link defense and attack. And of course, that's the midfield. I mean, it sounds very simple because it is, in theory. In practice, it can be hard, and the personnel does make a difference to that. As for the questions about fatigue, we heard from Mark that Dylan Mares is an incredible athlete, and we know from watching Josue for some time now that he's equipped to deal with, I think, this many minutes. He was crucial for us late on last season, but they are getting a lot of minutes, and I think it's not always the body that's tired. Sometimes it is the mind, and especially for a creative player, as let's say in Mares' case. I mean, sometimes you are probably out of ideas. On top of that, he has Saeed Robinson in front of him, who, you would think that's a person that he's going to try and playing as one of those top, two in the attack, but he's probably still getting to know his game as well. So I wouldn't sound the alarm just yet on whether there's too many minutes going to those two. But I mean, it is clear that we are relying on them a little bit. And so it's just something to keep an eye on, I think, but nothing to be too panicked about right now.
The other thing, and you have a good shout there for Saeed Robinson. I do want to take an opportunity to highlight the fact that although he is subbed off for Omar in the second half, Saeed, one of the brighter spots of this performance in terms of his kind of brightness on the ball and just willingness to try to make something happen, sometimes out of nothing. Did you start to kind of see what Saeed can add as a center forward in this one?
Yeah, I think so. I agree with you. I think he was probably the brightest spot for Locomotive in this one. Again, I think about what Mark said about Saeed, that he doesn't really know his best position yet, but they're trying to figure that out. So in that sense, I can understand. We've plugged him at number 10 now out wide and now at striker. So I think I've liked him best out wide where he's got kind of room to run. And I think he's got a pretty good pace over short distances and acceleration. So I do like that because Omar is really the only one besides him, maybe, who's going to be doing that, trying to go up against people. But I thought it was a decent performance for him, and I don't think him being subbed was because he had a bad game. He actually was the most accurate passer on the pitch, actually. So, good on Saeed for that.
Locomotive end with a clean sheet, and I mean, Christian, is it? Although the game kind of got away, I think, from Locomotive fans in the sense that we end with the 0 shots on target, so a clean sheet is our only route at that point to getting anything out of this match. But switchbacks have some moments in this game where they're pretty threatening. Was it still good for this defensive unit, to get that clean sheet and keep that kind of second consecutive clean sheet after the win over Monarchs?
I think so. I mean, it's like, everyone always says around here that if you're on the road, if you can bring a point back, then, that's always a good thing. So it wasn't like we were up 2-0 and then, we came back with the point after drawing 2-2. It wasn't that kind of game. So for us playing the way we did to come away with that result, with that clean sheet, I guess it's all you could have asked for. It is if that's the best that they could do that day, then a tie is, you'll take it.
So obviously, I don't think it's. I think in a game that was as kind of strange and unlocomotive as this one, I won't ask who your game changer was, but I will ask which was your favorite meme of the night. The referee who was losing control early and issuing a bunch of bookings. The USL typos team at the beginning of the match, or with Yuma Zero, or Diet Yuma, as I like to refer to him, and or the commentary team. So who was of the three? Who was the most meme, the biggest meme of the night, I guess?
I'd actually like to submit a write-in option, unless I'm making a mistake, but I'm pretty sure it was this past weekend that Lowry. I think they should, right at the beginning of the match, just chilling on the bench, arms spread out, maybe even a little bit of man spreading.
A little bit. Mask off too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So casual Mark Lowry is actually my write-in option.
I love it.
That's a good shout.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. What do I choose here? I'll give the referee a break because the commentator certainly did give her one. So it's probably a tie between the commentators and Yuma, because I feel like Yuma, his name is always the one that they have issues with, and it's not even the same issue every time. We've seen Yuma Mon Slaves, we've seen Yuma, and now Yuma Zero. So I just don't understand what's going on. USL Championship, what is the deal with Yuma and just butchering his name on your graphics? And the commentators were a disgrace. Not even because of partisanship or anything. They just seemed like they couldn't be arsed to do their jobs. They didn't know the players' names. They just seemed like they didn't care, and yet somehow they're getting paid to do this. So it's just really, I don't know. I don't know if those are switchbacks commentators or I don't know. I hate to say that because I do realize it is a tough job, but maybe we're just spoiled with Duke and Michael.
Well, and I think that's and they were Colorado Springs commentators. The thing that just strikes me about that commentary team on the night is like basically two things. Like, I think it's easy for commentators to kind of fall into cliches and kind of the normal narratives that you see in a 90-minute soccer match. And so they just fell into them so easily, where they started to like paint the referee as losing control. They started to paint Macca King like specifically as like the only guy who was committing fouls on the field. And they like played up kind of all of these different things, all while not being able to identify that number 19 for El Paso's name is Andrew Fox. And I said it on the night, like, I want them to say his name, because it kept saying the defender, or at one point he was called, they referred to him as Yuma, which was insane to me. The hairdos alone should be enough of a clue. But I think at the end of the day, like, yeah, like stuff happens. And I mean, commentators fall into like, I mean, Duke can hit us with a clean shites, like in the middle of a match, like that sort of thing happens. It's live. It's a live broadcast. There is no editing it. Like really there, your mistakes can be made. But I don't think there's any excuse for a commentary team being like as unprepared for a game as this team was. And I have to give a little bit more credit to the color commentator, because it seemed like he had at least watched El Paso play once or twice. But the play-by-play guy, it was as if he could have been watching like a team from Uzbekistan and had as much understanding of their squad and the style of play and the players. And, that to me is unforgivable, because there's nothing stopping you from preparing for the match. And I mean, it's your job at the end of the day. Like, I don't get paid to know about Real Monarchs players, but we do, because it would be stupid for us to host a show and say, oh, number 18 or whatever, or their attack or what. It wouldn't make any sense. It would be stupid to listen to. And so I don't get why a play-by-play guy would go into a game thinking this is good enough. Like
I watched Arsenal preseason today, just a preseason friendly against MK Dons, and the commentating was way, way better. You're right. I mean, there's really no excuse for not preparing. And I think that it just adds to this whole, like, USL Championship is a farm, like, league. And like it's like, tin no. Pot. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And that is frustrating to me, I guess, because we do cover this league. And so you want it to be taken seriously. But if anyone sees that broadcast, it feels so amateurish that it's not just, I think it's the understanding of these broadcasters too. Some of them think of it as this is only going to be watched by people who like switchbacks. And, not only is that not true in the sense that I think people from across the Western Conference and maybe USL at large watch other games. Like, I know I've watched random, non-Locomotive USL games this year. So other people, it's a national, it's on a national streaming platform. So you're not just on like the Colorado Springs CW. Like, that's not your audience, right. It's a broader audience. And I think it's just, I don't know, it's almost insulting when the commentator doesn't necessarily know more than someone watching the game. And like with the amount of access, they should add value to the broadcast. Otherwise, just play it without and let the, sounds of the game, like let, Omar calling the ref a fucking joke go straight into the microphone. Like that's, but anyways, that's my commentator rant. I don't know. I guess I feel more strongly about it because it's just like something that, I don't know. It's something that a lot of people want to do. Yeah.
Let's put it that way. A lot of people would love to call a switchbacks game, and these guys are in the position to do so, and they need to take a little bit more pride in their work.
Yeah.
So
anyways, so the Shithouse 11 for this one, little bit of an odd one, obviously, because I think we had the more bookings on the night. But was there anyone that stood out to you from Colorado Springs who earned a spot in the Shithouse 11?
I don't remember anything too egregious. I will say that defender Rubio, I believe, I think he had a shocking game last time out and another one here, but I don't know that it's because he's a shithouse. I think he's just clumsy. He's the only one I like. I feel like every time we play switchbacks, I just notice this dude with the man bun, like just going into some weird challenges. And I don't know that there's any malintent behind them. It's just like, what are you doing? Maybe him, but I think that might even be harsh.
I mean, for the sake of precedent, we have given the Shithouse, like we've given a spot in the Shithouse 11 to a defender who just played bad. And that was when we played Sac Republic. Gosh, now I can't remember his name. What a shame. But the guy who shanked the ball over the keeper's head and allowed Gomez to score.
I can't remember his name either. Damn.
Rip. As I was just talking about preparation, here I am caught out. But
in the mud.
It wouldn't be the first time that we've given it for an underperforming defender. But Christian, I think we talked towards the end of the game about a potential for Shithouse 11.
Yeah, so I got your back, Phil. It was Mahoney from Sacramento.
Yes. That's right.
But there was, I can't remember, it was on this side of the field, and I don't remember if it was Argueta, Servos, or Rubio, who they absolutely pummeled someone.
It was Argueta, for sure.
Argueta. Yeah. And, like, he's, like, bitching about it and telling him to get up and stuff, and, like, it was like he clearly like pummeled the dude. I think it was Brian, of course. Who else?
Yeah.
But also I'm throwing another wrench into the gears here. But I don't think we've ever had a commentary team for our Shithouse 11. But this might be the week. Yeah.
Well, I mean, someone is going to have to call the game. At the end of the day, like you can't
barely
not
call it.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I mean, is there room for maybe a dual induction of Argueta and the commentary team kind of as an ancillary staff of this one?
Yeah, let's do it because we gotta fill this team out. I mean, we don't have many fixtures left.
We do.
And we've got a smaller pool to draft from this year, so
I know we're only adding from a few teams, and right now a quarter of the Shithouse 11 is Locomotive players, and that is Omar. So,
oh my god!
So we will induct Argueta of Colorado Springs into the Shithouse 11. The score prediction table, I know it didn't go well, Christian, in this one for our predictions. I think Mika and myself both predicted a Locomotive goal, a Locomotive win with 2 goals. So obviously, as you said, Mika in the mud. Christian, can you talk us through the table right now?
Yeah, so let me recap from the Monarchs game too, because I wasn't here last week.
Right.
So Phil, Mika, and Austin all took away a point for the result, but no one predicted the score correctly, and no one predicted the goal scorer. I don't think any of us in our wildest dreams would imagine Nick Ross was going to score a goal, but he did, and he was the only one that did. So Phil, Mika, and Austin took away a point. I picked a draw and a Gomez goal, so I took away nothing. I don't have all the scores for last week. Again, I wasn't here, but I think it's safe to say that not a single one of us predicted a 0-0 draw. I think that's fair. So we're all coming away with 0 points. So that leaves us almost where we were a couple weeks ago, with Austin still in the lead with 7. Mika in second. I'm sorry, Austin in the lead with 11. Mika in second with 7. And Phil, you're catching up now since I didn't get anything from the Monarchs game. We are tied at the bottom with 5.
Within touching distance of the top 2.
Yikes.
Yeah, so
you step my game up.
Yeah, Mika, your lead is slowly diminishing.
So, the big news around world football today, as we move away from the Locomotive match briefly, Lionel Messi seemingly announcing that his Barca career is over, and that he is now searching for a new club. Tyler of Eighth Notch on Twitter hit our mentions and was like, odds that Messi ends up at Locomotive and clears in quarantine in time for the playoffs. Can you define those odds, and are they able to be defined by human numbers?
Well.
Oh my god. Do we even have like quarantine rules, honestly?
Yeah, I mean, as long as he goes to like Florida first, we're good, I think. Like,
well, I mean, Inter Miami is a shout, but I mean, yeah, what an insane year. I mean, if it was going to happen, it's in 2020.
Yeah.
That Lionel Messi leaves the club he's been at for 2 decades. I've spent the past couple years like really studying how Barcelona is run, because just they're the club that really got me into football, and so it's being a fan-owned club. There's just so much that goes into it. A lot of people think that Messi's just trying to force Bartomeu to resign. Elections have already been moved up for a new board, so he might just be throwing his power around at the club, and he's obviously fed up with the increasingly embarrassing exits from the Champions League, and the fact that, honestly, I think Barcelona have wasted his prime,
right.
Which, his prime is probably the longest prime there ever was, because he's fantastic. Yeah, I did crunch the numbers for fun just to see like how much it would really cost to pay his release clause, because, he can leave allegedly for free, but that's going to be a whole legal battle.
Yeah.
But if we wanted to pay his 700 million euro release clause, say in 72 months, that would be about 9.7 million euros a month. And that's with no interest. And
just an interest-free 700 million euro loan then.
Right. Well, yeah. So we'd have to, Mountain Star would have to get the loan from someone else, because in La Liga, release clauses have to be paid in one full payment.
Oh, wow.
So someone would have to deposit 700 million with the league straight up.
Yeah.
But to finance that, we need to get a bank in, or maybe a couple banks involved in underwriting this one. But I mean, yeah. it's a crazy.
GECU.
In all seriousness,
GECU, right? Are you available?
For real though, how much can you fit?
Yeah.
How much can you fit on those little Locomotive debit cards?
I will say, if we're talking about, the squad generating some revenue, that jersey customization would be the place to start.
We did see the post from the club with the custom Messi numbers and letters on the back, giving him the 10, which, I mean, questionable decision, I guess now. But, well, I guess it was Alexi's, and that's now vacant. But my question first and foremost is: did you guys notice? Obviously, the level of engagement with the Twitter post specifically, and then did you notice the amount of? I don't know how it broke into like Pakistani Messi stands. But
yeah,
it
there
was like
people
exclusively
in the
like
replies.
Pakistani like Messi fans roasting the club about even posting something like this.
Yo, there were people from like Bangladesh hella mad in the replies. And I'm like, how did this? I was going to ask you about that if you guys had seen it, because I was dying. I'm like, these people, they're like, what club is this? How dare you? And it's like, it's clearly a meme. Like, but yeah, I don't know, man. The fans from other parts of the world can be very intense, especially on Twitter. But well, yeah, I noticed that.
I guess it shows like Messi's reach is so insane. Like, it's not just even Barcelona fans. It's specifically fans of this player. And it literally kind of paints him as this Michael Jordan figure where he transcends like the sport of soccer. Like, he's just a known person that people will defend like against stuff that he doesn't need to be defended from. Like, this wouldn't even be on Messi's like radar, doesn't even begin to cover. Like, he probably doesn't notice half of this shit, right? Like, he has no idea that people are even talking about it because he's just drowning in cash. And he's the best soccer player, probably that ever lived. And it just blows my mind that some dude in Bangladesh is like, or like Myanmar is like, I must defend his honor. Like, that's pretty crazy to me. So anyways, Christian, we talked about the customization, and I mean, the madness has to end at some point. Like, Locomotive have to offer the customization, like, at some point.
Do we know, like, for a fact that there are other teams that do it? Because maybe it's a league thing for whatever. I'm just trying to cover all the bases.
They definitely do. I know for sure. I would say like the upper tier teams, I guess. And this is not a slight on Locomotive. The customization thing totally is. But the like Phoenix, people were like ordering their jerseys online with like customization, which is just not in the playbook for Locomotive right now. That is not like available. So yeah, it's an interesting issue.
So maybe it's between that. So maybe it's a manufacturer thing too, I guess. Cause like you said, the people that are ordering it online, they're probably getting it from, I don't know who does Phoenix's, like Adidas or something.
They have Macron.
Macron, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe BLK needs to step up their game, and I don't know how much it costs to run that, club side. So,
right.
I mean, maybe it just doesn't make sense from the club's point of view, but get with a kit supplier that can do it for you then.
Yeah. So it's funny because when they first started doing jerseys in the team shop, like BLK was blamed. Like, I was told by an employee of the club that they can't do customization because the material is not like won't hold up to it. But I'm like, you're doing it on every single kit that's, game worn. And I'm not saying that they're necessarily 100% the same quality, but there's no way that BLK is selling us like the replica version and versus the authentic. Like, I don't buy that. I think they're coming in the same box. Like, that's, that's just my thought. So for me, I think it's about the club. Like, they have to run, and I'm not sure, if you travel around, you'll see like in club shops, like around the world, they literally just have like the press, like in there that they would use for a normal game day. They have it in the club shop, and yeah, customization like costs extra. But they literally just do it like right there. And so I think that's something that I don't know what the machine costs or whatever. But we know the club has one because they're making these jerseys. So I just like, whether the Messi one like was a Photoshop or whatever, it's just something that like will constantly be an issue for me in that it just seems so crazy that I can't get a player on the back of my Locomotive jersey. That seems nuts in the second season of existence. So I'll never let it go.
Well, and the players' family members clearly pop up here and there on social media with, or at the stadium with custom kits. So
yeah,
not really helping the argument there that it can't be done.
And
you would think they'd want to monetize that, but I mean, whatever.
But speaking of fans popping up in the stadium, Locomotive announced this week that this match against Real Monarchs will have fans in attendance, albeit at a very limited capacity. Quickly, guys, just what did you guys make of the decision? And Christian, maybe we could start with you on this. And what did you make of the decision and kind of the protocols around it? Do you feel that Locomotive's going about this the right way?
I think so. From the beginning of the season, if I'm not mistaken, I think the number went down a little bit. I think they were going to let in more when they were talking about doing it at the beginning of the restart. And then what stood out to me about the protocol that I saw as well is the 12 feet. I don't know if that's what they were doing the first time either. So I think that they've kind of increased things. So that makes me a little more comfortable as a fan. I still don't know that I'll be going, but I think it makes me a little more comfortable because 800 in that stadium, I feel like it's almost going to be nothing. Like if you were to take a picture of 800 people in there sitting down, it would look like, the cleaning crew was going through the stadium.
Yeah.
So I guess in theory it sounds good. You just have to hope that it's not, it doesn't have any serious impact for what at the end of the day is just a soccer game.
Right. I feel the protocols definitely help and just kind of show that the club isn't just doing this. I mean, they've obviously thought a lot about this. They've had plenty of games now without fans. I mean, Mikka, do you think that this is a responsible return for the fans?
Yeah, I would say that it is. I mean, obviously, full disclosure, I'm not an epidemiologist or anything near close to that, but
none of us are. I guess maybe we should disclaim that.
Yeah, just from, speaking as an ordinary person and a fan of the club, obviously, I think this is probably the best that they can do. And I think that it does show that they've kind of done their due diligence and observed how other leagues have gone about these restarts. I know the NHL and of course MLS with mixed results have restarted, and of course the European leagues. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that we're at a point now where it would be completely ridiculous, I guess you could say.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, I think that we're going to be living with coronavirus for a while. And so with that being said, and obviously taking into consideration that it has, impacted a lot of people's lives, whether that be having, lost their businesses, their jobs, or even family members. I mean, I don't want to make light of that at all, but I do think that it is something that we probably need to try and live with. I think we have to, actually, if I'm being completely honest. I think that we, have to at least try and do as much as we can, but taking precautions and being considerate of one another. And I hope that, Locomotive fans are generally a great bunch. So I think that, I'm thinking it'll be good vibes at the SWUP this weekend. And I'm considering it. I'm considering going as press. I think it is something that, we would like to cover here on the pod, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But, probably something I'll just give some more thought to throughout the week. But I don't begrudge anyone who wants to go, especially if you've been, cooped up all summer and spring. So yeah, I mean, for those who are listening and are going, let's just, be considerate of one another and enjoy. But yeah.
I have to give credit to the club as well, because I think looking across some of the clubs in USL that have allowed fans back basically from day one, and kind of haven't really explicitly addressed what's going on, and it almost seems like there's a level of just like willful kind of ignorance, for lack of a better term, of just, we're just gonna like say that, you have to wear a mask and 50% capacity or whatever. And I think in Colorado Springs, I think like a lot of shots of the crowd were, demonstrating people who weren't necessarily, abiding by the best practices. But I have to give credit to Locomotive because, one, they were very, like, I think thoughtful about bringing fans back. And then they've also gone kind of above and beyond in terms of limiting it initially, and just being responsible about it. And I think it's a great way to see how it goes, and just see, how we can start reintroducing people to these, like, more, I guess, like group events. So I think it gives them a good platform to show like, no, we're, being thoughtful about this. And certainly the city, I think will probably have looked at the plan and agreed with it. So, I just like that Locomotive seem to be going about it in a very, kind of responsible way. And they're not just, no, we need to get fans back, as many fans back in the stands as we're allowed, just so we can like start making some revenue off of this. I think they understand that this is, a process, and they do have to build back up to that. So I have to give credit to them, as much as we've, had random criticisms in whether it was the formation or, memes or, not customizing jerseys. Like in this very kind of real way, they've made some really responsible and difficult decisions, I think, from a business perspective. So credit to them for doing that. But we do have a match to play amongst all of that. There is a match, Real Monarchs, and it's a bit weird, as we've talked about in the past, like previewing some of these matches. But Real Monarchs, obviously, we get the win over them 1-0. In the meantime, they've played New Mexico United twice and lost twice in the span of a couple of days. How do you think them kind of suffering these two losses against New Mexico kind of back to back, do you think that leaves them just trying to find some way to get a result in El Paso, or do you think this team as an MLS2 team is kind of just out to almost experiment like we kind of had been in Colorado? Do you think they're out just to try to identify some of these players who were, outside of the MLS squad and maybe see who fits, and maybe they're not so concerned with the results?
I think you always want to win, but it's very clear that this Real Monarchs team is not the same team that lifted a trophy last season. With the exception of a few like Jack Blake and the like. And they're going to be coming to us. They'll be on the road. So I would imagine they might be even more pragmatic than they would be at home, because I think that when we played them, they were trying to win the match. It wasn't just, let's just get through this and see what happens. I think they were trying to beat us in front of their fans. But we'll be in front of our fans this season or, this game. So all I can say is I really don't know how Real Monarchs will approach the match, but I hope that we approach the match. I hope we take it very seriously in that I want to see some of the starters that we're used to hopefully playing. I think that would be nice, especially, having the fans back in the stadium, at least 800 of them. I think it would be really great if we could get this win. I think it would just, I don't know. I think it would just be a lot of positive vibes if we do. And, you never know with Real Monarchs, obviously. But yeah, it'll be an interesting one.
I mean, Christian, despite the two losses to New Mexico, Real Monarchs not blown out or embarrassed in either of these. 2-0 and 2-1. Nothing that we haven't suffered at the hands of our nemesis to the north. So, I mean, do those losses affect the way that you enter this game from a confidence, kind of perspective as a Locomotive fan? Or do you go into it just like any other match?
I think so. I mean, I think that I'm kind of on the opposite side of Mika in that at this point, I'm not sure how. It's 16 games, right? We're playing 16 games?
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes,
we're halfway through the season at this point. They're 8 points behind the next playoff spot. I don't think that we're done winning, and I don't think that New Mexico is done winning. So I really think that this might be that experiment time where, obviously, kind of like what Mika said, that you try and win, but I really think that this might just be the time to try and identify talent. I think that they continue to bring in those fringe players and throw it all at the wall and see what sticks, kind of thing. So I think that those losses are, I think that we'll continue to see them from Monarchs this year. So between that and us being at home with fans, it's kind of, it is the home opener this season. Granted, we don't have the best experience there from our point previously.
Savage.
But I think that it will be a very hard game for visitors, even with 800 people. I think that it will seem like a bit more than 800 there, just because I think that everyone that is there, especially because of the way things are, everyone that's there really wants to be there. And so I think everyone is going to really kind of bring twice the energy that they normally would. So it's probably going to be I would imagine it'll be a really fun game for us, for Locomotive.
Yeah, I imagine it has to be a boost for the players to walk out and actually hear even a smattering of cheers versus utter silence, or piped in music or whatever. I think it'll just be a nice change of pace for them. We talked about Locomotive's attack, obviously, in this past game, lacking a little bit, and perhaps some of that coming from the midfield. But how does Locomotive go about in this game reinvigorating the attack? I mean, we talked about, we think Mahrez and Gomez are fit. We obviously have options. Omar didn't play the full 90 in Colorado Springs, so he's certainly an option to start in this one. Who do you see? And we saw from the bench very late on, Leandro Caillo makes his debut for El Paso Locomotive. So do you see, and this was a question from Fernie from Eighth Notch as well, do you see Caillo starting this game potentially? And then how, aside from Leandro, how do we get Locomotive's attack firing again? Christian, I'm going to throw this one to you because I know this is your boy right here.
Yeah, I still don't think he starts yet. And honestly, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but I don't know. There's a lot of thoughts going through my head about it, but I think that maybe we rarely see him as a starter. Maybe that just isn't what he was brought here to do. I don't know what they're paying him, so I could be completely wrong. They might be giving him huge money. But I just think because of the age, and also maybe he looks different playing in USL versus playing in Mexico. Sure. But he's very different than our other attackers who are, very, very quick, very athletic. He is Lomas almost, I think. And we saw how that fared, right, with a limited sample size, obviously. But I think that he may come off the bench more so than start. But hopefully he doesn't come on in freaking stoppage time. It's like I feel like almost at that point, like, why even do it? Like, just make his debut like at home. Obviously, I don't think on Saturday that anyone knew that fans were going to be in the stadium for the game. But like, why not make that the debut? Like, what was even the purpose of putting him in? You know, with 3 minutes of stoppage time on Saturday.
Well, and I mean, it's funny because obviously it didn't work out with Marios, but even at the end of that small sample size, he easily could have had, from the chances he had, 2 or 3 goals, which would put him, you know, above most of our team. So, I mean, Mika, in terms of getting the goals, do you see this as a attacking personnel thing, or are you looking across the team on this?
Oh my God, we have this conversation all the time.
We're always trying to reinvigorate the attack. About once every 3 games, we need to reinvigorate it. So, yeah.
I know. We are currently tied for second in the league with 4 clean sheets. So the defense is locked down, even with all the bodies coming in and out. But yeah, attack is always a question mark. I think I want to agree with you there, Christian. There are players that have made their living kind of being closers, if you will, like in baseball, the closer and, you know, the super sub as it were. So he might be that. Right. Olivier Giroud, you know, that kind of player, which is not bad at all. I mean, if he can come on and give us goals, that would be great. It would be very interesting if he starts, because then I have a bunch of questions about how we actually line up if he starts. But as far as what I think we need for this game and going forward, and I've criticized him on this podcast before, but I think Omar Salgado really is crucial to advancing the ball forward and just at least, you know, trying to get into the box and make something happen. His final ball is rarely there. I get, you know, I've brought that up. We all have kind of, we get that, but I think still his movement is crucial, especially when we're going through, you know, dry spells here and there in terms of goal scoring. And he has put the ball in the net this season. So, you know, maybe that's coming along for Omar. Hopefully he comes back into the match. As you said, he didn't play the full 90. So I don't see why he wouldn't be able to start.
And
for half a second, I thought you were going to say Drew was the, when you started your answer that way.
Oh my God. Can you imagine?
I thought you were gonna pull a Mark and just put a shocker out there on the.
Nah, dude. If I ever say that, like, y'all need to come check for my safety. Like, that's not being forced to say that.
Behind that 8th notch Zoom background is a gun. Like, no,
it's Drew in a green shirt.
Yeah,
so he doesn't come in the back.
No, if I'm gonna suggest a Becky to start an attack, it's Janine. So that's
facts.
But no, I mean, it is funny because I think in this one we obviously first off, shout out Omar Salgado hit us with the follow back about a year later or about a year and a half later. Because you
put that meme, he saw the clout that
Keanu Reeves, the Keanu Reeves meme. I thought that was pretty spot on. I'm not gonna lie.
I thought so too.
I thought it was pretty clutch. But Omar and Nick, for me, are 2 players that we often talk about kind of the end product, or Nick especially, we talk about being unlucky in front of goal. Obviously gets a goal last time out against Monarchs, but Omar and Nick, to me, are 2 players that are very, very good at a lot of things. But sometimes we miss that the finish or that final ball, whatever it is. So I think in this last game, we just saw how important they can be in terms of, as you said, Mika, advancing the ball forward. I think Nick is, and I think it was very apparent in this last match. I think he's so vital, and it really highlights for me why Mark thinks so highly of Nick. But Nick is more than anyone else, because we obviously kind of focus on Dylan for his ability to receive the ball from midfield and turn and attack, and that's obviously a huge strength of his. But I think Nick is more than anyone that player that takes the ball from like defense into midfield. And so, and Richie does that as well, I think, with some of his passing, from that number 6 role. But those are the two players that I'm looking at as like, they can really change how we attack. Like, we look like a very different team, with them in the side. So I think partnering Omar and Gomez has worked quite well up top this season, despite the fact that we spent all of last season saying that Omar is a winger. I think Omar as a free forward, not playing as a 9, but playing as a forward, right, where he can drift out wide, he can get central when he needs to, but he has the ability to kind of move around. And then Gomez is truly like a center forward, with Omar playing all around him. I think that can be really dangerous. And I know we've like fallen into the trap many times before of saying like Omar is about to break out. And he feels like that player where he's like right on the edge of just going absolutely bonkers from like assists and goals. And I don't want to necessarily say that, where, he's just going to change everything. But I think in this particular matchup against Monarchs, he can make a real difference. And Nick coming back into midfield can make a similar difference in just making our team look a little bit more fluid. I don't know if that's how you guys feel about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're always like, wow, Nick is never dropped. And then when he's dropped, we're like, this is trash. Yeah. So he gets the side ticket, honestly, him and Richie. Yeah. So yeah, that's a good shout too. I would like to see Nick. I mean, like I said, I want to see like the starting 11, the best one out for this one. I think that the fans deserve as much. I know that the team is not going to be planning for that, but as a fan, that's what I want to see.
Sure.
Only the hits.
Yeah.
Only the hits. Bangers only.
I was like, yeah, give me that good time rock and roll. That's a deep cut. That's a deep cut joke from I Think You Should Leave. So we're just wrapping things up in my meme content and Christian's memes. But anyways, the small matter of the score prediction is still to come. So I guess Christian, I think we maybe start with you. And then maybe me as the two bottom teams right now. And then Mikka can take last and Austin will hit us up later. But Christian, score and scorer in this one.
This is a big game for us. I'm going to say we almost have another switchbacks game, but not quite. But I think we keep a clean sheet. I'm going to predict 3-0. Like I said, I think that maybe I'm going to eat my words, but I think that we've seen who Monarchs are this season, and that's who they are. And I think that playing at home after getting 2 favorable results, I think that this is the game where things start turning around for us, and it's important to get some momentum too. I think because it's one of those 3 games in a week spans here. We play Saturday, Wednesday, and then Saturday again. So I think getting some good momentum is going to be important too. So I'm going to say 3-0, and I'm going to say, man, I got burned by Gomez. Last week or the week before. So I'm going to say Omar for sure gets on the board.
I like it. I do like the bold move. I'm going to go slightly. I think I'm going to go slightly more conservative. I do think the defense is playing extremely well, and I think there's a lot of like kind of, I don't want to say negativity, but like quote unquote negativity in what we've been talking about. But I don't think it has anything to do with how the defense has played. And certainly Logan has been stepping up. So I'm going to go for a 2-0. I'm going to just take a step back. But I do think they keep a clean sheet against Monarchs. I think we did a really good job of limiting their big chances on the road. So I hope to see more of the same, but with maybe a little bit more control than what we saw in the 1-0. And I'm going to go for, I think, it's tough to pick against any of these players, but I am going to go for Dylan is going to bounce back with a goal in this one, I think. And I know this doesn't count towards extra points, but I'm going to say it's from open play, not from a free kick. So that's my prediction. But I won't be. I hope I won't be penalized if I. But anyways, that's my thought. Mika, what's your thought for this one?
I can't believe y'all are going 3 straight clean sheets. I think we could see. I mean, the stats probably would bear this out. I think we tend to concede more at home than we do on the road. So I am probably going 2-1. 2-1. I think that we do concede, and I think it's probably of our own doing. Because this Monarchs team looks kind of hopeless right now. So I go 2-1, and I think that Andrew Fox finds his way into the box and just buries one over the line. Something messy, kind of messy goal.
A messy goal.
Bundling it over. A messy goal. Not a Lionel Messi goal, but a messy goal. Well, I don't know. I mean, again, Locomotive, if you're trying to, secure Lionel's services, let's chat. I can show you my numbers here, but
the financials behind the move. Well, it is it's a big matchup. Christian, you nailed it on the head. I think it is like the true home opener. Hopefully the players and the staff and everyone around the club can take some intensity into this one, just from having maybe a little bit of that boost of having fans in the stands. Big match also from a Group C perspective. Group C is becoming increasingly stratified, I guess, because, well, for whatever reason, New Mexico just refuses to lose at this point. And Locomotive have done well to kind of keep pace. New Mexico United on 19 points so far in the return to play. El Paso 7 points behind them, but with a game in hand. So, I mean, in theory, there's opportunity to make up some ground there. Colorado Springs with 5 points. Real Monarchs bottom of the table with 4. So huge match once again, just as every match has been in this abbreviated return to play. And it'll be great to see people back in the SWUP for this one, albeit pretty spread out and in a limited number. So big match, and I thank you for joining us for this big episode as well. You can find the podcast on all the major podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Play, which will soon be Google Podcasts. So there's slight change in platform there. And then we've also got some other platform launches coming soon, more to follow on that. And you can also find us on social media, primarily our Twitter at Seriously Loco. So be sure to check us out. And until next time, guys, stay loco.